Good morning, this is Angela with Parkrose Permaculture. I am sitting in the backyard of my Portland, Oregon permaculture garden here in Zone 8B, and it is a fantastic fall morning. It is drizzly and occasionally the sun peeks out from between the clouds, but it's really chilly and exactly how I love it. I love the gray and the rain. I am that basic girl who just lives for gray, rainy weather, and I'm so grateful to be in the Pacific Northwest where I get 9 months of that. So thank you to the folks who commented on my recent post. I am sick with COVID and some of my family are getting over it. My husband's already back to work. My eldest kid is already back to college. She has chemistry lab today, but I'm still feeling kind of under the weather and one of my other kids is sick as well. Knock on wood. The 2 youngest kids are super healthy and hanging out a lot in the basement, kind of isolating and hiding from us. So back enjoying my morning coffee and knitting. This pattern is called Glacier. It's a free pattern on Ravelry, not my pattern, but I will link to it down below. This is yarn that my friend Amanda gave me, and you can see this pattern has like a really lovely texture to it. Cool kind of nubbly pattern. I have to finish the armholes and I have to finish the neckline, which actually will be zip up and a high collar. And then right now what I'm doing is the waistband ribbing. For those of you that are knitters, again, free pattern I will link to in the description. Really clever little pattern and I'm really enjoying it. I did do some modifications because it's kind of straight and I modified it to be more hourglassy. So because I'm not feeling super awesome yet and because it's kind of windy and blustery and not that great of weather and I'm taking it easy, kind of knitting and chilling out, this is an opportunity to answer a request from a friend of mine, Jocelyn. She shared a post on social media back at the end of August that was kind of going viral. I had seen it all over the place. And she asked me what I thought of it and would I be willing to talk about what I thought of it. And I didn't have time at the time to give an immediate response. And I said, you know what? I want to spend a little bit of time kind of ruminating about this, thinking about my response because I have some immediate strong emotional reactions. So I've had some time to think about it and I'm ready to talk about it. And I thought it might be a helpful little dissection for y'all as well. If you see these kinds of posts on social media, or maybe you're having these own thoughts about sustainable and resilient living. Okay, so here's the post. And don't worry, we'll get into the whole thing. It is kind of long. It's a little bit of like, I'm going to take y'all to church and tell you how you need to do things. And I'm going to pass some harsh judgments on certain ways of living and being. Which tells you right away, like, I obviously had strong feelings about it. This post was made by a gentleman called John Moody, and I didn't know who he was. He made this public post. Clearly, he must feel that he has some kind of authoritative take. So I did a little Facebook stalking and saw what was public on his Facebook page. Didn't bother to go beyond that very much. It says he's the co-founder with Joel Salatin at Rogue Food Conference. So obviously, he's someone who's into food and sustainable living. Didn't really bother to research it further than that. That's the way it is. Don't really want to spend my time creeping on a stranger in Kentucky. So this post was a lot of like strong contrasts and a lot of dichotomies that were being established. I'm going to read you the post in a second. First of all, the photo at the bottom does not belong to John Moody. It belongs to the Dervaes family. I never can pronounce their name right. Dervaes. They were really popular in the early days of Facebook. It was a man and his adult, like stay-at-home children who ran kind of an urban agriculture business in California and sold their produce to a lot of restaurants. And they tried to copyright the term urban homesteading, and which is just like... And so they were very controversial figures. They had of like kind of like unhealthy enmeshment between adult parent and adult siblings and adult children. And the farm that they ran was all over social media and in a lot of publications and really hyped up the like sustainable food production and how many pounds of food they could produce a year. So that image was just like lifted from them. But that image is really loaded for anybody who's been interested in sustainable living and been interested in urban agriculture, urban homesteading, urban gardening. That's a very contentious image. It embodies all of this toxic individualism and capitalism and trying to copyright and then sue people who use the term urban homesteading. It kind of it kind of embodies the antithesis of community care and community involvement, and typifies the toxic individualism and individualistic pursuit of profit, right? So loaded image right off the bat. And I'll link to some stuff down below about the family and some of the controversy, because it was, if you were on Facebook in 2009, it was a big deal. Okay, so let's get into this. You will notice right away that as I read you the post, John is setting up this dichotomy, a consumptive household versus a productive household. And I have a whole segment every Friday, Houseful Friday, where I talk about homemaking, or as Harriet Fastenfest says, householding. And I am very much a harsh critic of the consumptive society that we live in. I was drawn to this like immediately. Consumptive household versus productive household. Okay, let's see what he has to say. A consumptive household has a $2,000 sound and entertainment system. A productive household has $2,000 in butchering, canning, and other such tools and equipment. A consumptive household has 2 cats and a couple of large rats masquerading as dogs. I think my 8-pound dog Martha would disagree with that. A productive household has chickens, rabbits, or other animals, and possibly an LGD, that is a guardian dog for your livestock, that resembles a small horse, and cats that more resemble mountain lions and other actual predators than Garfields. A consumptive household has back and front lawns and ornamental landscaping. They take lots of mechanical and biological upkeep. A productive household has back and front gardens with edible landscaping and a compost pile. A consumptive household has the sound of modern movies, TV streaming services, and transient pop music. A productive household has the sound of work, often with singing or podcasts or books on tape. Okay. Same budget, same cost, same 24 hours allotted each day. One makes you dependent, the other resilient. One a slave, the other a master. Completely different focus, orientation, and outcomes. So I got tagged in this. Jocelyn asked me what I thought of it. And again, I said I needed a while to kind of like process, because I had some very strong immediate reactions. So I've made a number of videos on toxic individualism in America and the myth of like pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and about how hyper individualism, self-sufficiency is never, ever, ever my goal. It's always community care. It's always community interdependence. And I've been really pleased the last year or so to see that message echoed around social media and a lot of homesteading circles, on a lot of Facebook pages about, urban farming and resiliency and permaculture. This pushback against the kind of libertarian, individualistic kind of mindset of like escape and set up your own little fiefdom, and instead focusing on community care and interdependence. Really pleased to see that. Okay, so let's cut to the bottom part first. One makes you dependent, the other resilient. One a slave, the other a master. Like, I'm just gonna come out and say it. If you're comparing anything in modern American life to slavery or the Holocaust, like, get over yourself. Like, I'm sorry, but having to like pay your taxes and participate in American society is not the equivalent of being enslaved. So like, please stop with the hyperbole. It's gross and racist. So, but it also sets up this very false notion that one of the things his idea of a productive household will make you free and resilient, and will make you your own master, your own, controller of your own destiny. And that you will be independent and you will take charge. And the other makes you dependent on a system and makes you serve that system. Now we can make all kinds of criticisms about capitalism and, how we are dependent on a system that exploits us, right? And it's very hard to extricate ourselves from that system. I would argue the people who say they have extricated themselves from that system and have become resilient and independent and their own masters, like, bro, really, you're posting this on social media. You are still paying your taxes that get you your roads taken care of, your fire department covered, the services that you need, you are still participating. So you are not actually independent. It's possible to live in a system and criticize it. It's It's really not possible to escape it. It's possible to ignore the ways that you are dependent and plugged into that system, and engage in magical thinking and tell people that you are independent of the system, but you're not. You are not independent of it. You are still living in it. You're still benefiting from that system, and you are still being harmed by that system. I speak a lot on this channel about good, better, best, and how, you know, we can't do anything perfectly, and engaging in purity fallacies and creating false dichotomies is not helpful. It's not realistic, and it sets us up in a system where we are ignoring the realities of how we have one foot here and one foot here, and we are being pulled in multiple directions, and it oversimplifies the realities of the culture that we live in, and it's not helpful. It also sets us up for a situation where we have an antagonistic relationship with people who live differently than us, where it's very easy to get on our high horse and judge other people who aren't doing things the way that we do them, aren't doing things in a way that we perceive as morally and ethically superior, and how harmful that is to our communities, and how harmful that is to the way that we engage with other people, and how it ultimately, you know, it can make you feel smug and feel better about the choices that you're making. Doesn't actually make you more resilient, doesn't actually make you a better person, doesn't actually make you more right. That's why it is called a purity fallacy. So first of all, let's talk about the things that he thinks a productive household has. They have butchering, canning equipment, tools, they have livestock, they have manly, buff, predatory cats, and they have dogs that are big like horses, and you know, they don't have those kind of wussified Garfield fat cats that are lazy, and they don't have like pocket dogs that are basically rats, right? Like all this kind of hyper masculine energy and depiction is brought to this. And I find that that's pretty common in certain kind of homesteading and self-sufficiency circles, the perpetuation of these kind of hyper-masculine stereotypes and what it means to be a real man, and like back to the land, and you've got axes and tools and like big strong dogs who will bite you, and like manly things, and like, okay. We all know that it's women that make the household go round, but okay. At the beginning of the post and down at the end, he sets up this really strong dichotomy between like useful tools and this kind of like judgment of entertainment in general, right? No sound and entertainment system in the productive household. The Rona's getting me ill. So he sets up at the beginning and the end this kind of judgment against households that have sound and entertainment systems, households that love modern pop music, TVs have streaming services. And first off, I'll say, like, we don't have a TV. We haven't had a TV in more than 20 years. I freaking love movies. I love modern pop music. I am a diehard fan of Fall Out Boy. We have computers, and we have video games, and we have a streaming service. We didn't for a long time, but I got Netflix, and I really enjoyed Sweet Tooth seasons 1 and 2. Like, I enjoy those things. It's possible to enjoy entertainment and art and culture in a modern American life and not just be like a consumptive person who sucks all the energy out of the planet. In fact, I would argue that participation in modern discourse and modern culture and enjoying the music and art and entertainment of modern life, that's really important to our quality of life. There is a balance to be struck where your whole life is not the pursuit of entertainment, right? And you are not sold on the notion that your only worth and your only purpose is to just like consume media, consume products, and spend your life hours doing that. As I said, good, better, best, and good life balance. I always talk to my kids about good life balance. Hey, Hal, how many hours have you been playing Deep Rock Galactic? Do you want to have a little balance check here and assess like what is a healthy amount of time I am spending video gaming or on TikTok or watching movies? And really try and strike that balance in life. For our family, that's what's worked really well. For unschooling, it's worked really well for me personally. This presumptive judgment of people who enjoy popular culture and media and popular music, like, where is that coming from? I think that's kind of like a very boomer mentality, right? I say that as a zennial, a term that I hate. It's a very boomer mentality. It's a very, I think, typical mentality of any aging group at any point in time to be like, the good old days were better. We need to go back to the simpler ways of the good old days. And I made a post about this on my Facebook page yesterday. Permaculture is not anachronistic. Permaculture is not saying we need to regress in societal norms and expectations in the way we live our lives. Not at all. It's not a like go back to ye old timey days. It is saying what worked really well in the past, what was gentler on the earth, what was living in harmony with nature, how have we lost important ways of living and being and engaging with each other on the planet? How can we recapture those? At the same time, how can we jettison all of the harmful, exploitive things we did in the past? And how can we find ways to live that reduce suffering and increase livability for people? And so for folks engaged in good permaculture design, we aren't a harken back to ye good old days kind of a person, right? We're not the like everything modern is bad. I don't believe that. I can love listening to my next door neighbor sit on his front step and play folk songs on his guitar. And I can also love listening to Taylor Swift with my daughter. I can love reading books, like really classic books. And I can also love watching something on a streaming service. Those things do not have to exist separate from each other for you to be okay as a person. Along with that, this notion that the only kind of animals we're allowed to have are animals that are like farm animals, working animals. Like, bro, pocket dogs have been around for 1,000 years, right? Like, having animals as companions is something we have done as long as we have been domesticating animals. And even before we were domesticating animals, we sought out companionship from animals. I think that, to me, with no evidence to the statement, really is our urge to connect with nature, our urge to want to be connected to the natural world. We want to have connections with other living things besides just humans. Nothing wrong with having a pocket dog or a fat, lazy Garfield cat that doesn't do anything if you want to. That doesn't make you, morally deficit if you have those things. Then he gets into a consumptive household has back and front lawns and ornamental landscaping. Y'all know I don't like lawns. They use a lot of water. They use a lot of resources. They are classist status symbol. And I, of course, am a big fan of front and backyard gardens. But that gets us into something that he's describing in this whole post, that his definition of productive means you necessarily are engaging in an agricultural life where you butcher, you have tools and equipment to run a homestead, where you have livestock, where you have large gardens and you compost. He's saying the only kind of productive life is one that is very pastoral, that is very idyllic. It reminds me of Marie Antoinette engaging in her practice of creating her little country village, and how the aristocracy, the royalty in the 1700s and 1800s loved to play peasant. I think a lot of what Americans engage in when we engage in this kind of homesteading, self-sufficiency, back to the land prepper behavior is we are play acting a little bit, because most of us are middle class. And as someone said in Jocelyn's post, I'm gonna read their comment. Yikes, the privilege is like 50,000 on the Scoville scale. Like rich white people buying land to do their self-supporting farm and looking down on the poor who got priced out without even bothering to find out why they did get priced out within a couple of generations because of predatory lending practices. This is really gross. It's why I've never been able to stomach any kind of permaculture or back to the land groups, even when it was at the height of my interest. I think that's a great comment. The people who have the ability to play back to the land, to play this kind of notion of an agricultural productive household, are often affluent people who made their money through generational wealth or through capitalism, and then can go and buy their country farm and play country gentleman. Not everybody. There's a lot of struggling folks who watch my videos who live very simple lives and do not have generational wealth, who maybe have a small plot of land and have a small kind of homestead. But I see so many folks in my comment section who are like, my number one barrier to permaculture is access to land. I do not have the ability to afford land. I have not inherited land, which I think is a big thing here in Oregon. A number of the prominent kind of agricultural families and a number of like prominent folks I see featured on social media, but also on like OPB, have inherited their farms, because who can afford $3 million for a farm nowadays in Oregon, right? So this post fails to acknowledge the generational privilege. It fails to acknowledge the ways that in order to become this guy's definition of a productive household, you have to have participated in the consumptive culture to gain the resources. And it also fails to acknowledge the ways that you are, in a sense, play acting at pretending you are separated, pretending you are self-sufficient, while you still use the roads that other people's tax dollars helped maintain. You still are willing to participate in accepting government's infrastructure. You still are willing to use a profit paradigm that is based in capitalism. It also presumes that anybody who is not engaged in an agricultural way of living is by default not productive, which is extremely ableist and is extremely unrealistic. We need all kinds of people to do all kinds of important roles in society that are not agricultural. And I'm going to be very real, as someone with a large permaculture garden that takes a significant portion of my time, I couldn't have a career in like medicine, or I couldn't be an engineer, or I couldn't do a lot of other really important jobs and do this. I am making life choices to do this, and that means I'm opting out of doing something else. And we still need all those other things to make society go. And so this notion that like everybody should get back to the land if they're going to do permaculture denies that that's not what permaculture is. It's not an agricultural system that every individual in society must engage in. It is a way that we pursue resilient agricultural methods that interface with society and resilient societies and communities of people. We can't have resilient communities of people if everybody is a farmer and nobody is doing distribution, nobody's a doctor, nobody's an engineer, nobody is engaging in all of the other really important things that make society go, right? And kind of this like pastoral fantasy, kind of playing Marie Antoinette here, John Moody. Lastly is this notion that people who don't do what he is saying you need to do are not engaging in work, and that rest and entertainment is by default not productive. This is something I have struggled with internally, and I've talked about a lot on this channel. Overproductivity. Maybe it is my strict kind of German American upbringing. Maybe it is the fact that I'm an ex-evangelical and that Protestant work ethic is really freaking strong and deeply ingrained. If you were raised Presbyterian, you probably understand that pretty profoundly. Whatever that may be, it's very difficult for me to access rest. And I talk about that struggle a lot on this channel. And I think it's important for us to remember taking time to rest, to enjoy art and entertainment, to step back from working is what being alive is about. And so the fact that this gentleman wants to divest from consumer culture and at the same time is perpetuating this notion that the sound of work is what is important, not the sound of listening to music or watching movies. You are perpetuating the notion that all we are meant for is work. That's not true. We have bought into this idea that our life, especially here in America, right? We are, unlike most of Europe, we have no mandatory vacation for workers in America. There's tons and tons of people who don't get any time off from their jobs unless they're ill. And even then, it's probably not paid leave if they're ill. So the notion that all we're meant to do is work is really harmful and really perpetuates a capitalist ideal. So I would just encourage you to push back against the idea that overproductivity, that work is what we are meant to do, and that you should feel shame and guilt and be unable to rest when you do things like listen to music, watch movies, engage in restful pursuits with your friends, entertainment pursuits. So this was a little bit of a long video, but Jocelyn, thank you. I did eventually get around to dissecting it. For me, this is a harmful, false dichotomy that is being put forth. This is a purity fallacy that is very common, I think, in a certain segment of the sustainability movement. Particularly, I'm not saying this gentleman is because I don't know enough about him, particularly like maybe LDS and evangelical or conservative Catholic, like deeply religious people who are very much imbued with a certain kind of a view of worth. And people who have generational wealth and access to land and resources, wanting to play back to the land, and people who really have a strong need and feel an increased sense of self-worth when they put down the way other people are living. They need that comparison to feel okay about what they're doing, and they need to pass judgment on other people, and they see the world as very black and white. I think those people are common in sustainability movements. I think that they're very common in America. They're very common in American sustainability movements, and they are just another iteration of capitalism. Even though what they preach is escape from society, they're perpetuating all of these harmful norms in society that actually are a barrier to resilience, and they're actually going to keep you from being a resilient household and a resilient community. So that was really long. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What is your take on this post? Did you have as strong of a reaction as I did? If you sit with your reaction for a while, does it change, or does it just kind of distill into more like, yeah, this is a no for me? Because this whole post is a no for me. What do you think we need to become a resilient society? What does rest look like? What does entertainment look like? How is a productive household different than a resilient household? That might be a topic for a future video, actually. So please share your thoughts in the comment section, and please don't forget to click like and subscribe. I am hopefully doing a good job of hiding it, but I feel like garbage. So I am actually going to go make a hot water bottle and refill my coffee and get back to some quiet knitting. Please take care of yourselves. I hope you're staying safe and healthy. COVID is really surging right now, and I hope that everybody is protecting themselves, because even a mild case can lead to long COVID. So yay for novel viruses that we're still learning about. But also yay for science. If everybody was engaged in agriculture, we would not have the wonderful medicine and science that we have to treat and care for our bodies and our well-being. So thanks again for watching. I'll be back really soon. Bye-bye.